my gosh, thank you. Thank you, Salem. You guys are so great. I'm just very excited for two reasons, okay? Big week for me. Oh my gosh, you're here, Alexander. Sorry, that shouldn't be part of the special, but this is my friend from Chicago that has surprised me and I didn't know he was coming. Oh my God. That's amazing. All right, let's go. Let's get out of here. No, this is so great. What a special night. There's so many people I love here, and this is so special. And it's extra special. Two things. This is a big week for me. Number one, I'm doing this, okay? Big deal. Number two, guess what? At 42 years of age, I finally found a pair of jeans that fit me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Take them in. Look at these babies. Huh? Look at them. Oh my God. Off the rack. $32 at Macy's. Thank you so much. Yeah. This is a huge deal for a short woman who is mostly ass. Okay. This has been, try to celebrate responsibly out there. This is a big deal for me. I have most of my life been shaped like if the mom from The Incredibles was also a mermaid. And it was just, so I'm feeling good. I got pants that fit, and it's just, it's cool. And this is my 5th time taping an album, and usually, just to let you in on a little, like, inside baseball, usually I am a fucking wreck before an album leading up to it, just like happenstance. Like my first time, I got sexually assaulted by another comedian and then relapsed. Second time, we're not going to get into it. Second time, I was in the midst of the relapse and I was very suicidal. It's a good album. Great album. Check that out. Third time, I had just gone through a very messy breakup, and I was super broke, like the kind of broke where like I couldn't afford a hotel room. I had to sleep on somebody's floor doing my art. You know how that goes. Fourth time, I had just been hospitalized and had a miscarriage. So every time I've ever, just like happenstance, every time I've gone to do an album, I've been like, how are you guys doing? Me too, also great. But this time I'm great, you guys. I actually am great. Yes. Yeah. I'm doing, I don't want to jinx it, you know what I'm saying? But like I'm doing really good in my life, and I'm happy, and I have a nice relationship, and things are going well. I have money. I have fucking dental insurance. Yeah. Sorry to brag. But it's the first time in my adult life, and it is a big deal. And I'm doing good, and I'm excited about it. And I don't know, I just feel like it's kind of cool. I just wanted to share that with you because, like, in my last comedy special, I had a beaver behind me, and I talked about how, like, when I first started comedy, I was a single mom, and I was like, I don't know how you do this. How do you create a career out of something so stupid? And I told myself, it's just like beavers, right? Stick by stick, stick by stick. And then, you guys, I fucking did it, okay? Yeah, I built a fucking dam. I got a beaver dam, and it's working out for me. And so I'm quitting comedy after this. I'm too happy. You can't keep doing comedy when you have a good life. It's not how it works. You're supposed to be miserable. I'm too happy. I'm going to quit comedy. And not just because of that, because I also just got the most amazing job offer. Listen to this. It's incredible. I did not know. Okay, so just to let you in on a little something. I am an amazing tickler. Like just what you're thinking, tickling, okay? Who's ticklish? Is anybody ticklish here? Who's real? You are. I can tell immediately. He crossed his arm and he backed up. You're super ticklish, aren't you? Yeah, you are. You're super ticklish. This is how good at tickling I am. I can tickle people without even touching them. It's true. Did you know people can do that? I can just make deep eye contact with you and then just be like, here, lift your arms above your head. Yeah, do it. Come on. Come on. You're tough. Yeah. Pretty good, right? Yeah, you felt it. That's professional level tickling, okay? So on a podcast at some point, I was telling these people, like, oh my God, I'm so good at tickling. I could be like a professional tickler if that was a job. And then, you guys, a man from the internet messaged me, and he said, hey, I heard that you want to be a professional tickler. That happens to be my personal kink. By the way, he's from Portland. He might be here tonight. Sir, I am not kink shaming you at all. Number one, good for you knowing what you like. Number two, he said, I will pay you to tickle me No, nothing sexual, fully clothed. You can have someone else in the room. I just want you to professionally tickle me. And I was like, just out of curiosity, what does that gig typically pay? And he said, I usually pay $300 to $400, but because you're a minor celebrity, I'll pay $1,200 an hour. Fuck comedy. You're telling me for $1,200 an hour, I can just like tie this guy to a bed and be like, do 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 do. That sounds like a great job. That sounds great. I'm fucking quitting comedy. I'm doing that instead. I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable. I feel like I should have checked with you before the show. Are you into some consensual stage tickling, sir? Probably should have checked. The other reason I'm quitting comedy is because apparently I'm supposed to. At the top of the show, I told you I'm 42 years of age. And I've been saying ever since I turned 40, well, I always talk about my age, but ever since I turned 40, I've had several male, like, more famous than me comics, like, pull me aside and be like, hey, you shouldn't tell people your age because you look younger than 42 and you could probably get away with saying you're like 36 or 37. And I'm like, why would I do that? I am 42. Why would I pretend I'm in my 30s? And they're like, well, because like, you know, if you pretend you're in your 30s, people will be like, oh, she still has a few good years left. And I was like, are you guys gonna kill me? Is there like a rule I don't know about in comedy? Do you guys kill lady comedians after the age of 43? Should I do a Make-A-Wish? Oh, I think I'm gonna do a Make-A-Wish. Do you know what I'm gonna do for my Make-A-Wish? This is true. For my Make-A-Wish, before the male comedians kill me at the age of 43 for being so haggard, I want to watch Elon Musk die. That's what I want. Okay? Yeah, thank you. I'm a beekeeper, and people are always like, do you have any beekeeping jokes? And I don't, and it really bothers people, and all the time people are like, you should write some beekeeping jokes, but it's not like a funny hobby, it's just mostly like pain and honey, you know, like there's not like a whole bunch of like, oh, I was out in the bee yard and a bunch of them climbed into my pants, you know, like it's, that is pretty funny and that has happened several times, but like, you can't make a joke out of it. But then I finally have a beekeeping joke for you and I'm going to tell you. It's okay. So a couple years ago, I was invited to Eureka, California, and by a semi-legal weed farm asked me, which I later learned means illegal weed farm. I did learn that the hard way. Yeah. They said, hey, we have a bunch of beehives out here that haven't been maintained in like over a decade, and they're like feral. Could you come out and like, they also had like a beautiful property and like cute little trailers. It's cuter than it sounds. Okay, they had cute little cabins and stuff, and they're like, you can stay here for free, you can do comedy, and it'll be really fun, and you can, in exchange, you'll take care of our beehives. And I was like, oh, great. So I went out there, and here's the first thing. Okay, this is when I started to be like, oh, how semi-legal are we talking? Is when I got there, they were like, okay, when you get to town, call us, because somebody will have to come pick you up. And they had me park at a grocery store, and they didn't put a bag over my head. Okay, they didn't do that, but it very much had that vibe, where they were like, you're not keeping track of the streets, are you? I was like, no, definitely not. Should have told my mom I was here, though, for sure. But we drove deep up into the Humboldt Mountains, and like there was dirt road after dirt road, and we were like deep. And I grew up in Idaho, in rural parts of Idaho, and even I have like, this is really far back into the woods. And I started to get like kind of nervous, but they were so nice and they were so excited I was there. And I ended up having like a wonderful trip. They had me put on a comedy show for their employees, just kind of impromptu. We all, smoked a bunch of weed and it was super fun and it was very sweet. And their bees were a fucking mess. And I took care of that. And at the end of the week, I was getting ready to leave and they were like, oh, hey, before you go, why don't you pop out to the shop and you grab yourself a little bag of weed or whatever. Just take as much as you want. Just grab one of the bags once you're in there. and take it home with you. And I live in Idaho, where weed is still very, 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 very illegal. We just barely legalized hemp. That's where we're at emotionally with weed in Idaho. So I was like, oh my gosh, thank you, that's so generous, you've already been so kind. So I went out, and they had like this, it was like a hangar, this shop. It was gigantic, and it was very poorly lit and very dirty and kind of dusty. And I went in, and they were like, you'll see, there's like a bunch by this one shelf. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I go in, and it's trashed in there. There's like garbage bags everywhere, and it's just kind of gross and dirty. And I find the shelf, and I'm expecting like a little gift bag of weed, like a little like mom serving size of weed to take home with me. And I'm looking, and I don't see any bags. And so I go back, and I'm like, hi, sorry, I know you guys are super busy, but could somebody come with me right now and like show me where the bags are? And they're like, show you where the bags are? They're right by the shelf. And I was like, okay, I didn't see them. So if somebody could just come and help me, please. And they were like, fine, someone will come help you. So one of the owners came with me, and we went back in, and he was like, here, take a bag of weed. And he was referencing the like leaf bag size bags there were like hundreds and hundreds of gigantic Emma size bags of weeds in there. And he was like, I was like, oh my gosh, no, I want like this much weed to take home to Idaho. And he was like, well, that's not acceptable. And they packed, they would not let me take a little bit of weed. They had me take like a several felony bag size of weed. And I kept like, I was like, I'm not taking a trash bag full of weed. And they're like, fine. So they got like a paper shopping bag, and they're just like adding it in, and I'm like taking it out. Like, so it's plenty. It's really plenty. This is the most weed anybody's ever seen in their entire life. But thank you so much. So I ended up crossing the Idaho border with this giant paper bag full of weed, just in like, I'm not a rule breaker, okay? I know this job makes me seem like, pretty out there, pretty wild. I'm not. I'm terrified of being in trouble, and I crossed the border with like my asshole in my mouth, basically, just, oh my God, hitting, like doing exactly 55, 2 and 10, just like sweating. But now I'm a drug mule, and that's pretty cool. After that, I try very hard. I have 3 kids, 3 teenagers. I try very hard not to lie to them. But, when they would ask me, like, do you smoke weed? I'd be like, I occasionally smoke weed, but, like, I don't have any in the house and blah, blah, blah. So after that, when they asked me, I had to be honest and be like, I do have an amount of weed in the house, a regular amount of weed in the house. Depending on which part of Humboldt County you live in. It was so stressful. It was so funny too, because shortly after that, my kids, I try to be reasonable with them. Like, they're gonna experiment. I've always been like, just be honest with me. And my oldest, after that, he came home, and I thought maybe when I picked him up, I thought maybe he was high, which. I don't know if you've ever tried this, but it's pretty fun. My husband and I, we went and picked him up at a party, and I was a little high. And here's my new hobby, confronting my kids about being high while I'm high. So fun. Hey, buddy, you been smoking the reefer? Huh? Yeah? Big disappointment. No, so try it. If you have teenagers, really fun stuff to do. It feels very good. But I asked him when we were driving, if he had smoked pot, and he was like, no, I'm just tired. And I was like, okay. And then he went to bed, and I went in to check on him a little later and brought him some dinner. We were having hamburgers. I brought him a hamburger, and I was like, oh, what a sleepy guy. Yeah, he's pretty tired. He must be growing, he's growing. It's that age. He's growing. And a little bit later, a couple hours later, I went to tuck him in, and he had fallen asleep on top of that hamburger. Which I was like, I have a humble amount of weed, and I've never fallen asleep on a hamburger. So we made him come out and sit, and I was like talking to him, and I didn't want to confront him. I didn't want to, I didn't want to be mean about it, but I was also still like, well, maybe he's tired, maybe he isn't high. But then he started doing something he's never done before, which is asking me questions about myself. None of my kids have any idea I'm a person. I was listening to him. I was listening to him answer questions for a scholarship a few weeks before that, and the boy knows nothing about me. He's like, "Mom, what's your name?" I'm like, Jesus Christ. But I knew he was high because he was like, "So, like, before you became a mom, did you have, like, hopes or dreams?" Yeah. Tons of them. He asked me so many, like, personal, in-depth questions about myself, and I was like, "Hey, man, you're high." And he was like, "How did you know?" I was like, I'm a detective. This has been such a good year for me. I got married this year. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. To a nice guy, too. To a really nice man. Such a nice man that I'm realizing how mean all the other people I've ever dated are. Like, we had been together for a little while, and I have big boobs now, okay? You can take them in. They're great. I have pretty big boobs now, but that's because I put on some COVID weight, which, by the way, turns out all you need to do to get big tits is gain weight, and we have been lied to. Oh, I get to eat what I want, and I get huge hooters? What the fuck, America? What the fuck? I grew up in the 90s. You were supposed to be, like, super skinny and also somehow have massive tits. Like, that was really hard. Anyway, so this is true. Every straight guy I dated before him at some point offered, because I had little tiny titties, okay? They were cute. Not knocking little tiny titties. I like big boobs. Always wanted big boobs. Because my sisters have gigantic boobs. And in 8th grade, like when they got big boobs, when 8th grade came around for me, instead of big boobs, I got cystic acne. So that is why I'm an atheist. That is why. I always wanted big boobs, and I always had little tiny, little tiny double A cups, tiny, tiny little boobs. And every straight guy I ever dated before, at some point while we were dating, offered to get me a boob job. Yeah, at some point we'd just be like, "Hey, if you want your tits done, I'd pay for that." And I'd be like, "Thank you. Thank you so much. What a generous guy. I'm so lucky." And it wasn't until I started dating my husband that he, like, loved my tiny boobs. He loved them so much. He was so into them. And like, he loved my tiny boobs so much, he constantly was always titty fucking him. He was always titty fucking him. I thought that would be quieter. And then I was like, titty fucking? Yeah, okay, cool. Titty fucking, okay. He was constantly titty fucking my cute tiny little boobs. And like, if you have never titty fucked an A cup, that is like, you're building sand castles with no sand, like you are like making magic, like he would like start back here and like try to find enough to work with, and you can't lose an ounce, okay? Like, you cannot lose. He would just be after it, and he loved it. He was all about it, and I was like, this guy loves me. He's, like, in love with me. Yeah, I was like, oh my God, he's such a good guy. He's so sweet. And I was telling somebody, like, oh my God, he's never even, like, one time offered to pay for a boob job for me. And then I was like, oh, he's not a good guy. He's just poor. He can't afford a boob job. He couldn't even get me Invisalign. You know what I mean? Like, we, this last Christmas we found, like a new kink that I want to share with you. It's very fun. It's very exciting. It's a little out there, and here's the thing. I don't know if you're familiar with my previous work, but like I am a hoe, and like I have done things. I've done everything. Like I kind of sometimes feel bad because he has been with less people than me, and sometimes when we're going to do something, he'll be like, "Ooh, let's try something new." I feel like a 90-year-old French prostitute, just like, Emma Arnold has done this, you know, like, tried it. It's a good seller. I don't know, that's not a French accent, but I don't know what accent that was. It was like Arnold Schwarzenegger. But he, like, so I always kind of feel bad because, you know, I want to, like, do new things with him and have things be, like, brand new for both of us. And at Christmas, we found something that neither one of us had tried, and I want to share it with you because it's very, very fun. I was giving him a little Christmas blowjob, and I was, you know, like you do when you're not a thoughtful gift buyer. Yeah. I got you socks and underwear, and I'm going to swallow you whole. That's what I do for Christmas. You're welcome. So I was doing that, okay? And again, not to, like, brag, but I am, like, very good at blowjobs, okay? Like, I'm any kind of oral sex. I am gifted. God gave me a gift. And I was in there. I was doing all the things. Here's the thing about oral sex. You got to keep it moving, okay? Just keep it moving. Keep it moving. Bells and whistles, okay? Just boom, boom, boom. Just try everything. So I was doing that, right? I was in there. I was doing all the things. I was like, well, I was doing all this stuff. He was really enjoying it. And I was also enjoying it. And then he did something that no one has ever done before. He took both of his hands and very gently, very lovingly, put them on either side of my face, raised my head up, looked me right in the eyes, and said, "Merry Christmas." He wished me a Merry Christmas, but, like, so genuinely, so thoughtfully. He was like, "Merry Christmas, baby. I love you so much. I'm gonna love you forever. I can't wait to spend the rest of my Christmases with you." And I came just from that. Which maybe for some people isn't a brag, but Emma Arnold, she's a hard come, okay? You gotta put your work in. You're down punching your clock. You're doing your time. You moved your wrist wrong. We're done, you know? It was incredible. I was like, holy shit. You just, like, cracked a code. This is a big deal. I was so into it. I was like, we gotta figure out this fucking Merry Christmas thing. I want to dig deeper into that. Let's get you a Santa suit. Let's get me a Santa suit. Let's see if Mrs. Claus is into it. Like, let's really dig in here. I was like, fuck yeah, we found, like, a new thing. Which, when you've been together a while, is nice, right? When you find, like, a new, like, we're gross. Yeah. Oh, I was so into it. And then, like, a few weeks later, I was like, let's do that fucking Christmas thing again. And we started. He was like, "Mere." And I was like, nope, no. Not authentic. It is, has to be on the day, apparently. It's a kink you can use once a year. We tried other holidays. Happy Arbor. No. We're fun. We're a fun couple. We're sexy. We're kinky. We're fun. We get approached a lot by other couples and by singles, not to brag. Yeah, we get approached, and I like it. It's very flattering. I thought when we got together that I would probably be taking a lot of those people up. Then COVID happened. And also I read an article that said that you keep the biome of everybody you ever had sex with. And that was the end of hoeing for me. That's the end of that. Oh, if you fuck a guy, you have to walk around with his bacteria for the rest of your life? No, ma'am. No. That really makes things very different for me. But we get approached pretty, like by people. And we were at a party recently, and this couple came up, and they were talking to us, and they were being very flirty, okay? Like giggling and laughing. And, the girl was doing the thing. The gal, she was like touching my arm and being like, "You're so funny." And I was like, I'm pretty talented in other ways, too. They were so hot, and I was into it. I'm going to tell you right now, I was into it. And I was like, oh, maybe we fuck this couple, And then they got my husband's number, and they were like, we'll be in touch. We'll text you tomorrow. And I was like, let's do this. They were like, you should come to our cabin. I was like, we should definitely do that. And then the next day, they texted my husband, and they were like, would you be interested in filming our church sermons? Oh, yeah! Same page. That is also what we were thinking. We wanted to film your church sermon. Not a euphemism. Got it. I want to show you the gospel? No, actually the gospel. Okay. That was a real letdown. Now I'm a born-again Christian. No, just kidding. Oh my God. So I don't know if anybody else had to deal with this, but during the big first chunk of the worst bit of COVID when we were all online schooling, I've always thought I was a pretty smart person until I had to do online schooling with my kids. And I was like, oh, never mind. Wow. Okay. It was I swear to God, I think the most useful thing I taught my kids during that year when I was doing online school was I taught them how to shotgun a LaCroix. It's not algebra, but it's going to come in handy. People are going to think that's real cool. So it was very rough. It was especially rough because my two older kids, they did okay. They didn't have too hard of a time, but my youngest has ADHD, and he really struggled with online school. And we spent day after day with me just being please just log into your class. Well, he's sliding out of his chair 500 times, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we got to pay teachers more. But he at one point got really frustrated with me. He was really mad, and he tried to hurt my feelings, which, first of all, I am a professional bitch. That's my job. People are very publicly mean to me all the time. I have a pretty thick skin, but also he's not good at it, My middle kid, that kid is mean. He'll be like, this is why Dad left. Okay, stuff like that, right? Yeah, he knew how to hurt my feelings. He knew, because they go through that. 13 to 15, my kids all went through a stage where they're just pushing you away, being mean. If you have little kids, you're like, that'll never happen to my baby. Okay. I said that same thing, and then I had the kids ripping my heart out of my chest all the time. But anyway, my youngest, he doesn't have that gift. He's not mean. And so when we were doing school and he was super mad at me, at one point he was like, I'm gonna hurt her feelings. And he was like, I hate the way you parent. And I was like, I try very hard to always treat my kids like people. They're allowed to have opinions that I don't like. That's fine. So when he said that, I was like, that's okay. Yeah, you can hate my parenting. I totally get it. I'm not a perfect parent. I make a lot of mistakes. And when you have kids of your own, you're welcome to parent them however you want. And he was like, oh, I'm not having kids because of you. I wouldn't wish this hell on my worst enemy. Yeah, same, bro. Same, yeah. I could be upstairs playing Santa with your stepdad, but, It's tough. I have 3 boys, and this is so weird, but incredibly often when people find out I have 3 boys, they'll always say the same thing. And I think it's so gross, and it's so fucked up. But really, really often, people will be like, oh, thank God, huh? All boys, no girls. Lucky you, none of those emotions. Boys are so much easier. They're not as emotional as girls. Which is wild. First of all, if you're parenting boys and they have no emotions, you're a shitty parent. That's on you. But second of all, whenever anybody says that, oh, boys are so unemotional, I'm like, oh yeah, that's interesting. Somebody recently said, with boys you just get that male logic. I was like, is that what I'm getting? Male logic. Like when my son comes out of the kitchen, it's like, we're out of Hot Pockets. This house is a prison. Like that male logic is what that is. A notoriously chill hormone, testosterone, as you know. So fucked up. I hate that. I hate when people say that. My kids are older. My oldest is 19, and I feel like I've done a pretty good job of raising kids. Pretty good. Not perfect, obviously. Like, one thing I would do differently, since the time my kids were very little, I thought it was very important to instill in them a disrespect for authority. I was always like, question everything, fuck the man. And I should have added a little tag onto that was like, fuck authority, except your mom. You gotta listen to her. She's the law, you know. I didn't do that, and it's been very hard to parent these motherfuckers. It's been really difficult. I did it to myself, you know. It's been a struggle. Like my middle kid, he was at school, and he was just stepping off school grounds, and his friend, who was already off school grounds, flipped him off from his mom's car, and my son flipped him off back, and the principal saw it, and he pulled my son in. He was like, you disrespected the school, you disrespected yourself, and you disrespected your friend, so you have to write an apology letter to all three before you can come back tomorrow. So my son came home, and he was like, fuck the man, fuck authority, I'm not writing that fucking letter. And I was like, yeah, but what if you wrote that letter? Like, what if you just wrote that letter real quick? Let's just write that letter, huh? Let's just write that letter. Please? And he was like, you told me always disrespect. And I'm like, yeah, but like sometimes moms have a busy day and can't be coming in to talk to your teacher, so let's just write that fucking letter, huh? He was very annoyed with me. He did not want to write it, but he went over to the computer and he sat there for like an hour, like tappity, 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 tappity. And I could hear him. He was like very angry. And he finally comes and he like throws a piece of paper at me and is like, there. And I pick it up, and on this 8x11 sheet of paper, my son, in the largest possible font, has written, no regrets. It should say regrets. It should say regrets. It should. It definitely should. But it says, no regrets. And he's like, I'm turning this in. And I was like, okay, all right. Like, but you have to deal with the consequences. I'm not coming down there to help you sort this out. You have to deal with it. He's like, I will. So he goes to school. He brings the letter. First thing, of course, what do I get? A call from the principal, right? Of course. He was like, hey, you got to come in. We got to talk about this letter. I'm like, okay. So I get into the principal's office, and he's got the letter, and he's like, this is hilarious. This is the funniest fucking thing I've ever seen. I can tell your kid has a comedian for, because no regrets? Jesus Christ. That is really good. That's very funny. And he's like, but you got to do something about this. You can't, there's 750 kids in this school. We can't have people walking around with no regrets. There have to be gerts. We got to get gerts up in here. You got to do something. I was like, what do you recommend? I'm out of my depth here. He's too smart. And he's too funny, okay? Do you know how hard it is to parent a funny person? It's brutal. The other day he came home and he brought me, this was actually very sweet in the beginning, okay? He came home and he had brought me a sandwich. And I was like, you brought me a sandwich? He was like, yeah, I bought you one, I got my brother one. Thought we could all have sandwiches together. And I was floored, because I'm going to tell you, I have done my best, Oregon, to bring you citizens, okay? To make citizens to give to you. I'm not trying to raise like 3 more useless white boys. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not trying to just be like, oh, sorry. I'm trying to make good people, good men. And I really tried. But recently when my oldest did start college, and I was kind of like, oh, I've done it. He then later that day came to me and was like, hey, what happens when you open the dryer before the cycle starts? And I was like, so this one needs a little more cooking, you know, like. Back back in the crock pot with that one. We'll keep working. I'm gonna do it though. I'm gonna give you citizens. I swear to God. And when he brought me that sandwich, I was like, I did it. Like, this is a thoughtful, unselfish, kind thing to do. And I've done it. I've raised a good person. And I just couldn't get over it, you know, because as a mom, like, a lot of times you don't get a lot of appreciation from your kids. They don't really notice you. You're just kind of like, you know, there. And we were just like sitting at the table, all three of us eating our sandwiches. And I kept being like, you got your mom a sandwich. Such a good boy. Such a good boy. You got your mom a sandwich. That's so sweet. You're such a thoughtful boy. And then one of the times I said, you bought your mom a sandwich. And his brother, who has autism and is a narc, goes, he stole that sandwich. I was like, what? He what? He what? You stole this sandwich? My son's like, yeah, I steal sandwiches all the time. You steal sandwiches all the time? He's like, yeah, I do it all the time. I actually have a whole system, a sandwich scheme, if you will. He's like, what I do is I go into Fred Meyer and I grab 3 sandwiches. It's important to grab more than one because one looks suspicious. But I get 3 sandwiches and then I go get a pack of magic cards, which I pay for on the other side of the store. And when they say, hey, did you pay for those sandwiches? I say, yeah, of course. I was like, you have a scheme? Like you have a whole like diabolical... This is something you've been doing for a while? And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, you can't, well, that is naughty. You need to stop buying sandwiches or stealing sandwiches. You can't be stealing sandwiches anymore. And he was like, why not? Fred Meyer Union Bus. Fuck him. I was like, oh, well. Do they union bus, you say? Well, that does change things dramatically. He's like, yeah, I steal from places that union, like fucking Starbucks. I steal from Starbucks all the time. I was like, oh my God. That's so cool. I would never do that. That is really cool. One time I smuggled some weed. No, you don't need to know that story yet. You don't need to know that yet. But I was like, okay, well, then ethically gray area, perhaps, but don't do it anymore, okay? I was like, just don't, like, I get it. Maybe I'm wrong, but just don't steal sandwiches anymore. I was like, even if you feel like it's fine, your mother, me, I feel like it's wrong. I think like stealing is wrong, and I think you shouldn't steal. And he was like, okay, give me back that sandwich. I was like, oh, but it's boar's head. It's a very good sandwich. It's a $14 sandwich. I can't afford that sandwich. Like, that's... It was such a good sandwich, too. I ate it. Of course I did. Of course I ate that sandwich. There's quite a few young people in the crowd, and I want them to know something. That was like, we're so divided, right? As a country. Things are so massively divided, and people are so, like, we can't agree on anything, ever. Not even the smallest thing. And I want the young people to know in the crowd. I grew up in rural Idaho for a lot of my life. And one half of my family is like progressive hippie, like mountain people. And then the other half is like scary redneck preppers, you know, like separatist people. So I grew up with like a real range of people in my life. And I want the young people to know that, like, when I was a kid, politically, even if people couldn't agree on anything else, like red, blue, left, right, if they agreed on nothing else, we all agreed that we hated the cops. That was, when I was a kid, just very sort of genuinely understood that everybody was mad at the cops, okay? And I found this out when I was about 10 years old because my dad and I were driving along and we saw someone being arrested and, like, you know, against the car, handcuffs on, and my dad rolled down his windows, and for the young people, you used to have to work for that shit, you know? Like, he didn't just, like, press a button, he was like, fucking, and he leaned out the window and he yelled, fucking pig! My dad yelled fucking pig at this cop. And my dad worked for the city. They had the same boss. He knew that guy. He's like, fuck you, Randy. You know, like, he knew that guy. It was intense. Yeah. I grew up with all these rednecks. Everybody fucking hated the cops. Everybody knew that they were the worst fucking dude from your high school. And then what happened, right? 9/11 happened, and then all of a sudden, all this propaganda started happening. They started putting cops in every single show, right? Every show's like, he's a cop, and he's definitely not an alcoholic. Doesn't beat his wife. Not an issue. Don't worry about it. Every show now has like a cop who's a really good guy who's great at his job. And that was not the case. When I was a kid, the cops were like bumbling fools in every movie, or just the bad guy. And then all this propaganda happened. And sometimes and I just want you to know, we all hated the cops. It was universal. And if we need to, before climate change kills us, I think let's get back to that, okay? As a country, let's get back to where we all agree. Thank you so much. Some of you are afraid the cops are here. They might be. I don't know. It's okay. That joke sometimes makes people mad. Like, sometimes somebody will be like, recently a woman was like, hey, my brother-in-law's a cop. Like, yeah, so's mine, you know? Like, fuck. Everybody has a brother-in-law who's the cop, right? You have a brother-in-law as a cop. Everybody. That's like an origin story for cops. Everybody has a brother-in-law who's a cop. Why? Because they tried to be a firefighter and couldn't pass the fitness test. That's how cops are made. It's 100% true. That genuinely happened. I have a brother-in-law who's a cop who's going to hear that fucking joke and be like, yeah, I really did want to be a firefighter. Hurts my heart. Well, I guess I'll just shoot someone instead. You know, just fucking. Honestly, I think where we started to really fall apart as a country was, it was when we started letting people, like, make their own bumper stickers. Like, it used to be that if you wanted a bumper sticker, you had to go to, like, Spencer's in the mall, and you had to pick out something we as a society had all vetted. Something we were all like, yeah, some of us agree with that. Enough of us do that it's on a bumper sticker. Like, cowboy butts drive me nuts. You know, like, we were all like, yeah, you know what? Throw that on there. They drive me nuts too. Now you can just go to like a county fair and be like, I want one that says, don't get the jab, Biden's a lizard, and also Dr. Fauci fucked my mom. Like, you can just put whatever you want. I saw that in Idaho. That's a real bumper sticker. Somebody fucked this guy's mom and looked like Dr. Fauci maybe. I don't know, but like, that's where we went astray. I think as a country, we need to go back to hating cops and vetting bumper stickers. That's what, yes, if we're going to maintain what we're doing. I'm an old mom now. I had kids really young. So everybody now, my friends, they're starting to have kids. Everybody's got little cops. That's perfect. Let's keep that take. It's perfect. That's what they are, aren't they, though? They're little fucking cops. I got cookies hidden under my bed. They're like, what's that smell? Smells like weed in here and cookies. Let me live. No, I did. I had my kids so young, and my friends, they're just starting to have little kids, and my kids are 19, 17, 14. They're like, on their way out, and it's sort of a weird, like, now I'm like the mom, like all my friends are constantly calling and asking me like advice, because like I have like 3 semi-success stories here. Like, yeah, they're stealing sandwiches, but they're very tall, like they're nice boys. Good looking kids, So I'm getting all these questions from friends. Like recently a friend called me and she was like, hey, I read this article that says you have to do a certain amount of skin to skin with your baby or they'll grow up with an attachment disorder. How much skin to skin did you do with your babies? And I was like, I'm not a perfect mom, but I'm pretty sure you leave the skin on the babies. Yeah. Do not skin your baby. Don't do that. And she's like, no, skin to skin. Like, you have to be, like, naked with your baby, like, their skin touching your skin, or they'll get an attachment disorder, and they'll grow up and, like, be a comedian or something horrible like that. And I was like, I don't, and it's just, I don't know. It's funny because, like, that's very sweet, because with your first kid, you're like that, right? Like, with your first kid, you're very, like, how much am I supposed to be touching them? You know, like, oh, God. It's like, they'll be fine. You know, they're going to figure it out. But then with your third kid, you're just, like, leaving him in the yard. You know, you're just like, I don't know, if a hawk takes him, a hawk takes him. You know, like... Oh, I'm so tired. I never sleep. I'm so tired right now. You have no idea how tired I am. I never sleep anymore. And that's because my husband is, like, I don't want to say a sleep talker, because that's not accurate. He's like a sleep combat fighter. He's like sleep training over there. He's very active at night. He gets up, he gets out of bed, he'll put his pants on and start to leave. And I'll be like, where are you going? And he's like, I don't know. It's constant, all night long. He wakes me up. He was working a really stressful job for a while, and he kept waking me up and asking me if I was satisfied with his customer service and would I recommend him to my friends and families. And I was like, you gotta quit that fucking job. Enough, go to sleep. My God, yes, very satisfied, 5 stars. He's been having nightmares a lot recently. The other night, he was laying next to me. He was, like, tossing and turning. And, and then he kept doing this. And then he finally yelled out, there's a lady in the park! There's a lady in the park! Just so terrified sounding. I don't usually wake him up, but I woke him up because he seemed so freaked out. And he was like, oh my God, what? And I was like, hey, it sounds like you're having a nightmare. Are you okay? And he was like, yeah, oh God, that was the scariest dream I've ever had. It was so scary. And here's the thing. He had, like, a good 2-parent home childhood, okay? He had like a Pop-Tart childhood, right? Like, just a normal. So, like, the things he has nightmares about, like, I could fuck you up with some of the nightmares I have. I have terrifying nightmares. But he has, like, the sweetest nightmares. So I was like, what were you dreaming about? What happened? I was like, you kept yelling. What were you dreaming about? I was like, oh my God, it was so scary. It was the most scary thing I've ever seen in my whole life. There was a lady in the park. I'm like, okay, there's a lot of fuck you. All right. Okay. Fucking lady in the park. There's a guy who eats my face in my dreams regularly. I could have almost been another, like, have younger kids. We had a pregnancy. We ended up having a miscarriage. It was pretty sad. It was pretty hard to get over. It's one of those things, like, I feel like if cis guys had miscarriages, we'd be talking about it all the time. But, you know, since it primarily happens to us, like, everybody's like, shut up, put it back in your pain hole. And, but yeah, we had a miscarriage. It was really hard. And after that miscarriage, I was like, that's it for me. Like, we have 3 already. I do not want more kids. Like, I'm set. I'll be honest, I wasn't even sure about number 4. Okay, like that. It was one of those miscarriages where you're like, I'm half heartbroken, half relieved. So it was like a very tumultuous, hard thing. And he's 8 years younger than me. And he had never really, like, expected to have kids. Then he ended up with my 3 guys. And then he was like, all of a sudden we were going to have this baby. And he, you know, got pretty attached to the idea of having a baby, having a young kid. And I was like, cool, we should break up. Like, I was, like, genuinely, like, I got to have my kids, and now you know that you might want kids, and we should just totally break up because, like, I don't want to take that from you. I don't want to be the one who keeps you from doing this, like, very cool, meaningful, special thing. And then you know what he did? This is going to blow your mind because I don't think a man's ever done this before. You know what he did? He went out and he got a vasectomy. Yeah. Yes, thank you. Yes, let's clap for him. He's here. And sounds like somebody's getting a vasectomy. Listen, okay? He was like, I want to be with you. I don't want to have a baby with someone else. Wanted to have a baby with you. That didn't work out. We have 3 kids that we love. I love our family. If the only way to convince you that I don't want to like run off and have a baby just to have a baby is to do this, I'm going to get a vasectomy. Then we don't have to worry about it. You don't have to be scared of having a kid when you don't want one. And he just went and did it. And listen, so the man I had 3 kids with, my ex-husband, he also got a vasectomy. After number 3, I was like, that one was made of broken glass and barbed wire. And I'm done. I don't want any more fucking kids with you. And I knew it. And so he got a vasectomy, but he was such a giant baby about it. Like he literally, he wouldn't let me come in the office, like a little room where they do it. And I was sitting out in the lobby. He literally came army crawling out on his stomach into the lobby, screaming, "Oh!" And I was like, oh my God. He said he was covered in blood. It was iodine, I found out later. But he pretended to be covered in blood. He convalesced for months afterward. He was like, this is the most painful thing I've ever gone through. You've never experienced. I had 3 natural home births, by the way. You've never felt a pain like this. It was the worst pain, and I felt so bad, and I was like so apologetic at the time, like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry you went through this horrible thing. So my current husband was like, yeah, why don't you come in while they're doing it? I was in the room while the doctor did the vasectomy, and ladies, we have been lied to. That shit was so fucking fast and easy. The doctor literally, I was standing I was watching, okay? I was watching the whole thing. He's literally never looked down, was talking to me about comedy the entire time. He was just like, who's your favorite comedian? Oh, she's great. Who else do you like? That's a lot of fun. At one point, he handed me the scissors and was like, do you want to do the honors? I'm just kidding. Unless, I could have. He was going to let me cut the cord. It took 10 minutes. 10 fucking minutes. And then after that, my husband mowed the lawn. I was like, okay. Get a fucking vasectomy. Every person in this room, go get a vasectomy, male or female. Yeah. What a romantic guy, huh? Isn't that the most romantic thing you've ever heard? Just went and got a vasectomy for me. That is love right there. Fucks me like he's Santa and gets his boss. Sorry. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Idaho's politics at all, but you're close to us, so I imagine you're paying a little bit of attention. You should. We're close and scary. It's pretty gnarly over there, but in the last 2 years, it's gotten significantly worse because a lot of people who were in bluer states during COVID were like, I'm not doing masks, I'm not doing these mandates, and they moved over to Idaho because we were just letting old people drop dead. We don't give a fuck, apparently. And so people moved over, and actually, weirdly, a lot of people from California and Oregon have moved over, and not to be a bitch, but you are not sending your best. You're sending the worst human beings who are white flighting out of urban areas. One of them is my new neighbor, and he is from Beaverton. And he didn't like the politics in Beaverton, and so he moved to Boise, Idaho. And he's constantly talking to me about politics. And here's the thing. I am trying to do this thing recently where I hate the system, not the individual. I'm really trying to do that. And so I've tried to be a good neighbor to him. I've tried to be a compassionate, loving person, even though we disagree politically. And it's gotten a little rough recently because he has been talking to me. He is real jacked up, and he keeps being like, I'm gonna start a militia, which, first of all, you don't need to start one. There are plenty to join. Lots of those in my home state. But he's been talking to me, and he's like, I can't wait for Civil War. I'm so ready for Civil War. And I'm like, Gene, you are 76. Yesterday, I helped you carry up a box of smokehouse almonds from Costco. But yeah, let's fucking do Civil War, you know? Let's do Civil War, I guess. There was one guy who just yelled woo for Civil War in the back, and I can see you. You're not gonna win either. I don't ever get to have the house to myself, and I feel like a lot of people who can relate, because like with COVID and like people working from home and kids doing online school and shit, like I went from having the house to myself all the fucking time to basically everybody being there all the time, and it sucks ass, right? Like I love the people in my house, but I wish they'd leave a lot more often. And the other day, my husband was like going to a little game night thing with some buds. And my kids were at their dad's for the weekend, and I was like, oh my God, I've done it. It's happening. I have the house to myself. And I was like, I'm going to take half an edible and do some yoga and just get real loose with myself, you know? Just get like real loosey-goosey. And I did that, and I was on my yoga mat, and I had lit some candles, and I was feeling really good. And then my kid stopped by because he was worried I missed him. And he came in, and I never want my kids to feel unwelcome in my home. I never want them to feel like I'm like, you know, wanting them to leave. So I was just like doing yoga and just kind of talking to him. And he started practicing his invisible trumpet, which is exactly what it sounds like. He was just like... And I was doing yoga, and I was just trying to, like, you know, someday they'll be out of the house, and you'll miss moments like this, and you'll be sad that there's nobody at your house to practice the invisible trumpet, and you'll wish that somebody would come by to do that. And about a half hour later, still going on that trumpet, just... And I was trying to be supportive, and I was like, hey, cool trumpet, buddy. What are your plans for the night? Mostly trumpet? Okay, cool. But then he finally fucked off, and thank God. He finally left, and I was just like, oh, thank God. And then I went back to it, right? And by then, my edible had like fully hit, and I was very relaxed, and I was in my yoga clothes, and I was stretching out, and I looked down, and I was like, oh my God, my boobs look incredible. Like, just one of those times where like you're about to start your period, and your boobs are the biggest boobs that anybody has ever seen. They're just like boobs, you know, and they were just so good, and I was like, I gotta take a picture of these. And so I did, instead of yoga, I did like a 40-minute photo shoot like you do, where you're just like so many angles, like candles, got good lighting, like, I took all these pictures, and then I was like, who do I send these to? Like, I don't have a crush on anybody, like I'm not chasing after anybody, and I know that like the obvious answer is like you send them to your husband, but like, do you? Doesn't that feel, it felt like, I don't know, it just feels humiliating. Like, it feels really creepy. Like, he's been at this game night for like an hour and a half, you know, he's like with his buddies playing, I don't know, Catan, cards, whatever it is they do. And then I'm gonna what? Just like text him a picture of my boobs, like, hey, remember these? You just saw them an hour and a half ago, but they still look pretty good. So... I felt too weird. I didn't send him. I just was like, oh, I guess. And then later I showed him. He was like, oh my God, those are amazing. You should have sent them to me. And I was like, no, it just feels weird. He was like, I would love it. Please, next time, please send me pictures. Like, I love it. And so the next time he was out, I like, very reluctantly was like, and this is sad because like when we were first dating, I was like, why am I so self-conscious now? Like, we're married, we're in love, I love this man, I like him a lot, I want him to be attracted to me, he loves my boobs. He was like, please send me pictures of, I can't be more clear. I want to see them every time. They never get old, send them. And when we were first dating, no shame, no self-consciousness. Like, I would, like, you know, text him a picture of my butthole and Winco. I don't care. I'd be like, look at this. Look how good it's looking today. Now I'm like, tits? I can't send tits? Like, what kind of G-rated bullshit is that? I can't even send. So the next time he was out, I was like, oh, God. And I click, and I sent it. I was like, there you go. And of course, he was lovely. He sent back like hard eyes, and like, open mouth. I gotta get home to those titties. He was like so into it. And when he got home, he's like, see, wasn't that hot? I was like, we're never doing that again. That was horrible for me. It felt vaguely non-consensual for some reason. Like, I'm not sending you any more pictures of my breasts. That's something I'll just have to cheat on him, I guess, Like, I have so many good boob pictures. Who am I gonna, I don't know. Maybe those church guys want to see my titties. I am not threatening you. I feel like I have to preface this joke by saying this is not a threat. I'm not threatening you. Here's the thing. I started to notice a few years ago that anytime anybody does something shitty to me, something shitty happens to them, like almost immediately. And I don't believe in like manifesting. I think that's terrible because like, I guess people with bad lives just manifested that. I hate that. I'm not saying I manifest. I'm just saying like, kind of started to feel like, the universe kind of has my back, right? Like there was a booker who was incredibly shitty to me. And he, when I showed up to the show, was like, oh, there's a guy here from LA. We're going to have him headline instead of you. And I was like, what? No. And he was like, yeah, we're just kind of wanted to have a dude, for professional reasons. And right after that, he saw his best friend die. Yeah, I'm not gloating over that. I'm not celebrating. I'm just telling you the facts, okay? I'm not like, haha. No, it's a very sad situation, and I'm sad that happened to him and his friend. But I'm just telling you, that happened to him. After that, there was a comic who very badly sexually harassed me and another lady comic. It was very, very gross at a show. The next day, he had a head injury. Yeah, again, I'm not celebrating that. I'm just telling you that this man got a head injury after fucking with me and another lady comic. I'm just telling you that right now. And the woman who had sex with my first husband, who was a very good friend of mine, you know what she does now for a living? She's a mime. Yeah. Fuck around and find out, America. You want to be a fucking mime? Huh? You want to be a mime? You stay the fuck away from my husband. No. Okay. This is either my closer or the next joke. I haven't decided. And that's probably something I should have done before we got here tonight, but I like these both a lot. The first one is sweet. The second one is sweet also. This is maybe not a joke, but it's something special that happened to me, and I feel like the last few years have been kind of rough, and I want you to be able to take this away with you if you've had a hard couple of years, if you're like a normal human being who's had a hard couple of years. I walk my neighborhood almost every day. I walk in our neighborhood, and I live in kind of a rougher part of Boise, which sounds like is not true, but that is a thing, okay? It's actually the neighborhood I grew up in, and there's like lots of trailers, and there's a lot of poverty there, and I love that neighborhood, but it does have a lot of issues, and there's a house that I walk by a lot, and there's a little girl who is often outside, no matter the weather, in that way where somebody, like somebody's mom is like, get the fuck outside, and they don't care that it's 12 degrees. So every day I would see her out there playing by herself and hanging out, and she always seemed to be having a really good time. Like, even if though she was out there by herself, and no matter how cold it was or how hot, she was always just, like, having a really good time and dancing. And, like, she always had these big headphones on, and she would always just be dancing around the yard and seemed so happy. And one day I was walking past, and she usually is kind of far away, and she was close to the fence, and I could actually see her closely for the first time, and I realized that her headphones are not plugged into anything. They're just big old headphones, and she's holding the end of the cord. And I realized probably every time I've walked by, she's like just got these headphones plugged into nothing. And she saw me and waved, and so I waved, and I told her, I was like, take your headphones off, and she moved one off, and I said, what are you listening to? And with like the most disdain in her voice, she goes, myself. And I just love that. And I feel like I know this has been a hard 3 years, but I hope that you've found some moments in your life that were quiet in the midst of this, where you actually got to listen to yourself and like hear yourself and hear like your, your own hopes, your own dreams. And I just thought that was so fabulous. Myself. So listen to yourself. That's the first closer I have. Here's the second one. And this is a confession more than it is a closer, because it's something that's gotten very out of hand in my life, and I am going to put it on an album and then probably leave the country, because it's during like quarantine when we were like in the house and we weren't leaving, and everybody, like the beginning, like 2020, the really hard like months that we were all really isolated. At the time, we were living in a 2-bedroom apartment with 3 kids, and we were sharing one bathroom. Yeah, that's why I have this 1,000-yard stare. That's because I've shared a bathroom with 4 men. But we all shared this tiny apartment, and it was small before COVID, but then like during quarantine, we were stuck in there and we were on top of each other all the time, and it got really rough, and the kids were doing online school, and they were fighting like how siblings sometimes do. And one day they were really getting after each other and being pretty like unkind, and to interrupt it, I was like, hey, who can answer my riddle? And I told them that if they could answer my riddle, I would make everybody homemade ice cream sandwiches. And I made up a riddle on the spot. And I told it to them. This is that riddle. What walks like a man, but talks like a crow? What walks like a man, talks like a crow? And my kids were like, oh, that's a good one. And they started like noodling it, and they were like talking about it, and it totally worked, right? They stopped fighting, they were getting along, they're like trying to help each other crack this riddle. They really want ice cream sandwiches. And then at the very like end of the night, I kept saying like, do you guys want a hint? And they'd be like, no hint. And I'd be like, do you want me to tell you? And they'd be like, don't tell us. And I'd be like, okay. And then at the end of the night, they still hadn't gotten it. Nobody got ice cream sandwiches. And I was like, oh, good night, And I thought that would be the end of it. But then the next morning, they were like back after it immediately, got up, and they were like making a spreadsheet to keep track of the answers they already tried. They're following me around. Like my youngest was like, is it a boat? What? No, it's not. Walks like a man, talks like a crow. It's not a boat. This is why you can't do algebra, man. Like, this is fucking a word problem, Jesus. Following me around. Well, walks like a crow, walks like a man, talks like a crow, walks like a man. And then they were like, can we get a lifeline? Can we ask somebody else? And I was like, sure, yeah, go for it. So they started texting people in my family and asking them, hey, do you know what walks like a man, talks like a crow? And my family got all into it, and they're like noodling it, and they're sending me answers. They're texting me like, wow, is it this? Is it that? Is it a boat? Jesus Christ. My sister's, it's hereditary. It's a real problem, apparently. And then, so like a few weeks go by, and like I get a text from my mom's hairdresser. Here, just wondering, I know you have this riddle. I start getting texts from like, my family has outsourced it to other people. They're also telling people. Then I start getting, somebody posted it on Reddit, okay, and on Twitter, and it went like a little bit viral, and I started getting messages from strangers like, is it this? Is it that? And people are making guesses, and like people on the Reddit thread are guessing different things, and I'm watching it, and like, this was, almost 2 years ago at this point? I still get like 4 or 5 messages from strangers across various platforms a day with guesses. Nobody's ever gotten it. Nobody's ever guessed it. Does anybody have a guess? Does anybody have a guess they want to do? What walks like a man, talks like a crow? Yeah, it's a hard one. It's a noodler. But here's the thing, Oregon. There was never a real answer to that riddle. Nobody knows what you said, but like ice cream sandwiches for everybody. Yeah. No, there was an answer. There's an answer to it, but like, here's the thing. I'm a comedian, and I was doing a bit. Is the thing. I was gonna be like, "What walks like a man talks like a crow," and then I'd be like, "Do you give up?" And they'd be like, "Yeah," and I was gonna be like, "Crow man." Crow man is the answer to that riddle. I thought it'd be really funny to be like, Crow man! You know, like, oh, I thought that would be really funny. And now I'm going to get murdered by somebody from the internet. So, Crow man. This has been incredible and so lovely. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Infinity Room. Thank you, Alex. And thank you, Dom from Blonde Medicine. Thank you. Oh, thank you. You're so sweet. Play me off. Play me off.